Corey Davis. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. We're talking on Brand Spot today. I'm Antonia K. Moore, and let's have a chat about what you do for a living and what inspired you, because it's very interesting. So you're an associate professor of the University of Johannesburg, and your
Correct.
primary objective is to make a difference by applying your knowledge and experience to the development of people and the betterment of humankind. That sounds like a challenge and a half. So tell us about that and how you got involved in what you're doing.
Let me tell you how it happened. So I am an academic, I've been for years, did my PhD in 2011, and then I did a project for students in 2013. Then there were 254 students in my class. They were tasked to develop a strategic conceptualization for an NGO called Matla Abana. And I was blown away by the effort these students put into this project. They went beyond, they interviewed so many people, they identified stakeholders, they wrote the most brilliant manifestos. I mean, I was in tears when we were sitting there with them presenting it, because Matla Abana is an NGO who campaigns against child rape and secondary abuse. And when that project was presented, the students came forward and said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, I was raped when I was 5. I'm so-and-so, I was raped when I was 7. And I mean, I knew about gender-based violence, but I didn't really grasp the concept that the children were victims of rape. And that changed my whole career path. I decided I'm going to become a gender-based violence activist on that day. I'm today a trustee of Matla Abana. I'm an advisory to Tears Foundation, and all my work is focused on gender-based violence as a global sustainability issue, and also gender inequality, which drives gender-based violence. So we've got an approach at UJ, and specifically at our department, that we educate with purpose. So the work that we do is always got application in industry, in real life context. Not all of it as serious, of course. Our master students this year are busy with a project, a campaign development for Plastics Pact, which is an environmental sustainability issue. But in general, we take our roles and our responsibility very seriously, and we educate our students to also develop a sense of responsiveness, responsibility to make their mark in industry, so that we can all be focused on global sustainability, even if they don't want to choose the complicated topic of gender-based violence. Gender equality is also a very important topic, as well as, of course, gender diversity. So we build this into our curriculum at UJ, if that answers your question.
Yeah, wow, amazing. There's a lot there. So I suppose, like, so when you were doing this project, I'm assuming it's probably in Johannesburg, and when you saw that or learned that there was, child rape and things like that, and you decided to change your career, what were you initially going to be doing, and how different then of a pivot did you make?
I was going to practice my usual curriculum-based strategic communication topics, where we teach them about engaging with stakeholders and about the responsibilities of business and society in general. I wasn't going to focus on gender-based violence in particular, because I wasn't as informed. But the interesting thing was, as I progressed with my gender-based violence research, I actually began to understand the scope of gender-based violence. And then I realized, but what happened to me in my childhood? I mean, I grew up in a very Afrikaans environment, in a small town in the Eastern Cape, and it was a very patriarchal society. And I then became to understood that what I experienced in my childhood was also gender-based violence. And what my mother experienced, because my mother died in a car accident when I was 14 years old, that is any kind of emotional, sexual, financial, psychological abuse is gender-based violence. And the impact on children, it's just remarkable. I mean, the leading studies have been done in Canada, for example. They've got a page called Learn to End Abuse, that they as a country went through a really deep process of engaging in the roots of the problem. And at the moment, I think Canada is one of the few countries who have gender-based violence prevention and intervention built into Occupational Health and Safety Act. So it's compulsory for private sector organizations to address it. So my research since then, since I've decided to become an activist, has shown me that, South Africa, for example, is number 103 on the World Happiness Index. And most people absent from work are not ill. If you look at the SADAG page, South African Depression and Anxiety Group, we've got a very high divorce rate. They say it's come down, it's 1 out of 5, but the second highest cause of divorce in South Africa is some kind of gender-based violence, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, financial, emotional. And that is a real concern. So I've embarked since on a research project that I'm engaged in at the moment, and I've been speaking to the leading companies in South Africa, CEOs, HR directors or executives, leadership in these companies, to inquire about their awareness of the impact of gender-based violence on employees generally, because what people don't know, in South Africa, globally, it's 1 out of 3.5, but South Africa, 1 out of 3 women experience some kind of this violence, gender-based violence in their lifetime, physical or sexual violence, 1 out of 3. That's besides the emotional and all the other kinds of violence. That's a fact. The fact is also that South Africa's statistics are 5 times the global average statistics for gender-based violence. So this means that if you're in South Africa, it's likely that you're either a victim or a perpetrator, or you're related to a victim or perpetrator, or you're acquainted with a victim or perpetrator. That is fact. The most prevalent form of gender-based violence is intimate partner violence. So more than 90% of those are never reported to police, never prosecuted. There's no justice happening. So it's a cycle that just perpetuates itself. So we now at the point, the president of South Africa published last year in March, the National Strategic Plan to address gender-based violence. So in this plan, there are 6 pillars. So at the moment, it is volunteers from different sectors in society that's setting up this national strategic plan that will be implemented as a unit that will be run to address gender-based violence. And the president called on the private sector. So this is why I'm engaging with the private sector to say, okay, how can we now bring in the concept of gender-based violence, which has previously been addressed as a public health concern. Your research has been done by the Medical Research Council, Human Research Council, World Health Organization, United Nations Women, World Bank step in at some stage, leading private sector companies such as Anglo. Anglo published a diagnostic toolkit 2 years ago. And they are the leaders in this area. And there is now this increasing awareness now if we're talking about brands and we're talking about leadership, there's this increasing call to say, but if we're going to address issues in society, then we need the private sector to participate. So we need leadership there. You'll see in South Africa, there's been a few companies who have been stepped up. For example, Gautrain and JC Decaux endorsed the It's Not Okay campaign. So there's an opportunity, every year, it's like some people say you build up to 16 days of activism and then there are things happening and then there's nothing again. And we don't want that. So we are appealing to brands who we engage with to say, but can you endorse some of this work? You don't have to develop campaigns on your own. It doesn't need to be a costly exercise. There is material to work with already. My research partner is Shared Value Africa Initiative, Tiki Barnard, and she has developed this campaign called It's Not Okay. And this is what Gautrain and JC Decaux endorsed, and several companies are beginning to support it. We hope to see a lot more support from brands because we want brands to add their logos to the billboards and posters that's going up to say, it's not okay. That we can, as a society, say, well, we're all stakeholders and we all need to do what we can do to change this picture. Because, globally, the cost was estimated in 2016, $1.5 trillion to the global economy, the cost of gender-based violence, which is probably underestimation now. With COVID, it's probably got worse, probably much higher than that. So every country has got their own strategies for dealing with gender-based violence. So you'll see there was a big report published in the UK, for example, by Garcia Morena. There are initiatives globally. If you think how much work is being done by so many bodies globally, that we're still not seeing a decline in the rate of gender-based violence. It should say, whoa, everybody should be doing something to end it, you know? Mm-hmm. So this is where it's taken me, and that's why I'm at this point. I'm very happy to be an associate professor that's got the opportunity to do this kind of research that is supported by my institution and encouraged. So that really makes me feel empowered, and it makes me feel inspired to do this work.
Absolutely. And you'd mentioned there that there was a diagnostic toolkit developed. I was wondering, what is the diagnostic toolkit? Like, what does it diagnose?
Well, it's a very interesting instrument. So, you know, when you've got a kind of a rating criteria where you have to tick, you know, how do you score on certain areas? This diagnostic toolkit, developed by Business Fights Poverty in collaboration with Anglo and some other non-government organizations, it's got like a scoring criteria in different areas. So in other words, in terms of how you are addressing the issue of gender-based violence, there are certain boxes to tick where you get a score. So at the moment, companies are very much driven by the ESG scores, environmental, social, and governance score. But at present, gender-based violence is not featuring in there yet. Gender equality is beginning to kind of come in there. It's not quite there, but it's becoming a much higher priority, because as we know, gender equality is key to eliminate gender-based violence. So it's like a compliance document to show how do you score in terms of awareness raising, prevention, intervention for gender-based violence in the company. But that instrument has not been adopted, to my knowledge, by South African organizations yet. We are just in early stages of engaging brands and companies. And we have been speaking to some of the top JSE listed companies in the country, and the reception has been warm and participatory. So I've got hope that we're going to come up with some strategies for South Africa.
Amazing. That sounds fascinating. I'm sure we could literally talk all day, but tell people where they can get in touch with you.
I'm at University of Johannesburg. So my address, cdavis@uj, universityjohannesburg.ac.za. That's where academics go. And then, of course, I'm on LinkedIn. As academics, we have very public profiles, so we're easy to find. I don't think there's any other Corné Davis that I know of. So if you just Google my name, you'll find me anywhere. You'll see my page on University of Johannesburg page. You'll see me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. You'll find me. I'm very easy to find.
All the usual places. That's fantastic. Well, listen, Corné Davis, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Absolutely fascinating work, and best of luck with getting corporations and brands to be able to work with you and collaborate with you in the future. I think it's a really, really important cause that you're working with. So, you know, best of luck with everything.
Thank you. I appreciate any support we can get. We have to do this together. We're going to do it.
I think it's amazing, and you know, you've got my support for sure, and let's hope that you're going to have everything you're looking for with the brands coming to you in the near future. So listen,
thank you,
take
Antonia.
care. No worries, and hopefully we'll talk again in the future.
Sure, anytime.
Great stuff.
Anytime.
Thank you so much then. Take care for now and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.